And I'm going to start reading this, I guess. Bloom. It never comes easy, does it? It tastes like poison in the mouth. Twisting north to south, a sensation in the heart, fluttering, falling. Deeper, deeper still, falling crown, twisting that frown upside down. Does a falling tree even make a sound? Who knows? Not I. Eternally bound. Bound to damnation. For my soul is at the peak. How does one know what to seek? A breath of fresh air, warmth rushing high, ablazed cheeks, knees weak, heart dyed, rojo, the most brilliant la flor. Yo florezco en invierno, sí, sí. But it'll never come easy, will it? For it tastes like poison in the mouth. Embriagadora veneno. Not venero, veneno. That I will never be freed from, north to south. I guess my main problem with the poem is that it's too confusing to me in the middle of it. So the meaning is kind of lost. How would I be able to fix that? Okay, the middle of it. I think we're going to say that the middle is this. This is what I would define as the middle, because it is, there happen to be an equal number of stanzas and lines on either side. That being said, we could just as easily define this or this as the middle. So do you have a pretty much that couplet? Okay, this is the middle of the poem. And we feel that this is unclear. So we can certainly talk about that. As usual, this is probably the last thing we'll actually talk about, because I need to have an understanding of the poem, right? What is the poem about is the question that I have to answer before, I can decide if it feels unclear or lost, or how I might approach bettering it. At that point, when we come around to that point, we can probably talk about your intent with this line, Sodephi. But I don't think we need to go into that quite yet. There's some Spanish happening here. Rojo, red, la flor, the flower. Yo florezco en invierno, sí, sí. I believe flore, I don't know. It's probably a verb meaning to bloom. I bloom in winter, yes. 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 Invierno, winter. Yo florezco, I bloom. And is in, sí, sí, yes, yes. Oui, oui. I'll bloom in winter, oui, oui. Yes. I bloom in winter. Yes, yes. Embriagadora is a word that I do not know. Nor do I know what veneno is. So, translation would be appreciated again. Intoxicating poison. Gotcha. Intoxicating poison. That makes sense, for it tastes like poison in the mouth. So, that's our little translation notes, because we must know. And now let's read it again. I'll modify it to venom. Veneno, venom. Same root. That makes sense from an etymological perspective. Embriagadora. This almost feels like it's maybe like a similar root to like inebriated, ebri, right? I wonder if that's in French we have embrigader, right, like brigade, which means corrupting or recruiting. Embrigader. Brig, right? Oh, this is embria, though. Embriagadora. Bria, right? I bet that's the same etymological root. We could look it up if y'all, I'm interested. Hold on. Wiktionary, this is me showing, so if I go inebriate etymology, comes from Latin ebrius, meaning drunk. So we can go to Wiktionary here. Latin ebrius, right? And then we can say derived terms. Descendants. In Spanish, ebrio, which means in Spanish to make drunk or intoxicate. So that means, right? They come from the same Latin word. That's kind of cool, guys. I'm a nerd about this stuff. So yeah, going back to Latin ebrius, we get both inebriated in English to be drunk, and then Spanish, but is embriagadora. That's the individual word, right? Embriagadora. Etymology. So now we'll do this word. Right, intoxicating, inebriating. Etymology. Embriagar. Sometimes we have to go far from embriagado from Latin ebrius. Guys, look, we did it. Language is so cool. Because some guy in freaking ancient Rome decided that some guy named Ebrius probably got really drunk, right? Now we have inebriated and embriagadora in English and Spanish. And that wouldn't have happened if Rome didn't conquer all of Europe and all the way to Spain and like into the Germany and the British Isles and affect Germanic and European, Northern European languages. Isn't that so cool? Isn't that so cool? Okay, we're done with the etymology tangent. I think that's so cool. I mean, it's the same with like flor and flower, right? They're like the same word, rojo, red. Yeah. This is one of my like little special interests is etymology and doing this. They stole my blood, they give you a recruit, or they're vampires. Yeah. The former, they had to run some numbers on an Ebrius. I can't even give my blood. Not good anymore. Damn. Your blood is damaged goods. That's sad. Can you check if embrigader in French is the same root? Sure. Yeah. Embrigader. brigadeer. No results. Brigadeer. Hold on. I think I did it wrong. Spelled it wrong. I did brigadier. Okay. I'm French. This is Wiktionary, by the way. So M and brigade, air. Etymology. So to rope in, brigade in French comes from Middle French, from Italian brigata, right? Brigata is going to then come from Latin. Well, it comes from brigare, right? Someone's following me because I'm talking about etymology. That's crazy. Comes from briga. Sometimes we have to go a long way. Briga, Italian etymology, comes from Germanic, right? Meaning to fight, to trouble, or to quarrel, which is just like brigade, right? As something in English, people who fight. So then if we go to like descendants, we get all sorts of different things, but it looks like it goes back to a different root. Also, welcome in FJ89 official. We're nerding out about etymology. I love etymology. When a linguist hears etymology on a Twitch stream, the follow button gets clicked immediately. You're a linguist. That's super cool. I love linguistics. I have spent some time like doing conlangs, though not very successfully. I took some linguistics classes in college, and I would have kept taking more linguistics classes if I didn't drop out. So at some point I'll get back to learning more linguistics. But we were talking about this poem that we're reading by Sodephi, which uses Spanish, and it says embriagadora veneno, intoxicating poison, right? And it's like, oh, veneno, venom, that makes sense. Embriagadora, and I was like, I wonder if this comes from inebria, like inebriated, right? So then we went and we looked at the etymology, and it all, in fact, comes from Latin brius, which means like drunk. And then Leon was asking about French, embriagader, which is not the same because it comes from like a more English Germanic root, briga, which is where we get brigade and brigadier and probably lots of other fighting words. It's just so cool. I'm also a poet, but let me not interrupt the stream. No, I love when my stream gets interrupted by people who are smarter than me. That's why I stream. Which branches of linguistics did I study? So I did an introduction class that was giving like an intro over just kind of like dipping our toes into phonetics and then syntax, and we talked a little bit about like the psycholinguistics, like the brain stuff, right? And like developmental stuff. And then in my second semester, I took early education and language acquisition, which was really cool, about how like little kids learn language. And then I took another syntax class because I loved syntax. And I got about halfway through that semester, and then I ended up entirely crashing out of college and dropping out. Yes, the trees. I love the trees. The trees were really fun. I particularly loved the fact that if I understood syntax, and I understood the way a language on a fundamental level constructed its sentences, right? I could um, skip, right, learning grammar because like syntax is just the more precise way to talk about grammar. Like grammar isn't really real. And I thought it was so cool that if I wanted to learn Spanish, I could instead understand Spanish from a linguistic perspective and a syntactical perspective instead of learning what feel like very arbitrary grammar rules when you don't have like the underlying understanding. That was really cool to me. I still don't really know Spanish. Did you enjoy phonology too? Um, yeah, not as much. I did enjoy it from the perspective of making noises. Like the the way that people don't make the same sounds and the way that like language fundamentally, is sort of affected by the sounds that we can make and the way we acquire sounds is very cool. Like I always struggled to roll my R's and I still do. Yeah, like and being in class and then the teacher being like, you know, um, uh, like giving us a chance to try to like make the noises on the IPA chart was just very fun. Um, and so that was all cool. Um, I really love etymology though, and especially from like a language learning and a interconnectedness and like historical aspect of languages. I think it's so cool that I can look at words and if I take the time to stop, I can think about them and think that maybe, oh, this connects to another word in another language that I've seen before. And it like reinforces that like interconnectedness and the exchange of language and the way things develop over time. I think that's very cool. What was my major, if it's cool to ask? I had a fake postmodern humanities department major, um, uh, which was called interdisciplinary humanities, where the way I described it was as long as I can convince my academic counselor that these classes are all related to each other in some way, I can take whatever I want to. So I was taking linguistics and philosophy. I was taking like writing and creative writing. I was taking, I took a class about writing on, about, and from the US carceral system. So we were reading like stuff by incarcerated writers and we were talking about the carceral system. That professor is one of my favorite ever, and he had been incarcerated, and he was super cool. We love Dr. A. But I also took like a Buddhist philosophy class. I took a lot of philosophy. Um, while I was still studying, I was really thinking I was gonna go. I was also taking like religious studies classes. I was really thinking I would go in the direction of. I'm just gonna take the poem off the screen for a second. Um, I was really thinking I would go in the direction of translation and that I was gonna learn languages. I was gonna learn linguistics. I was going to learn like religious, philosophical, and cultural contexts. And then I wanted to like go to India and translate Buddhist manuscripts from Pali. um, what was my L2 going to be? I mean, I wanted to have like many L2s. I still think um, uh, like I would love to be a polyglot, except I really only have an L1 right now. um, but Hindi and Pali. Um, but then I also really wanted to learn Arabic, just entirely different. And then I know some Spanish, uh, but I'm only fluent in English. So that was where I was at. And then I also wanted to like translate poetry and stuff. So yeah. And then I dropped out of college. I had a mental breakdown. All of those aspirations kind of evaporated, and they're still very exciting to me to think about. But mm, yeah, I think that stuff is like not exactly in the cards as much. I don't think I'm going back to college, you know. I can learn language on my own. It's just I mostly do poetry now. I mostly write. Thank you for subscribing. That's very generous. Um, so not many people I know, not many people know this. I can get by in Hindi and Urdu, and I studied Arabic. Yeah, that was totally the like direction I wanted to go. I know that Urdu has like incredible poetry, and as like an artistic language is like massively important. So, and you didn't want to learn French. Okay, Leon, I had a list of 10 languages I want to learn, and I think French was on there. I was like, yeah, I want to learn Arabic and Russian and Greek and Urdu and Hindi and Pali and Spanish and French and Hebrew. Uh, but I I did not go and learn all of those because uh, just hasn't happened yet. I love language. I feel like I'm very good at learning language, and like the little bit of time I've spent learning Spanish has gone a very long way, but it's not something I prioritize or have people to talk about it with and engage with language and other languages. So I think I just haven't got around to it. And I'm focusing on my writing in English, which is fine. Uh, ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? That's the only thing you need, right? The library. Uh, I feel bad words are a go-to move. Yeah. Yeah, Urdu is very poetic. Arabic is very rich too. I did French and Japanese for about 5 years. Those those were my only A grades, but unfortunately ended up studying more STEM subjects before circling back to linguistics and Arabic for my undergrad. Dude, that's super cool. It's never too late to become what you could have been. Yeah, I mean, I say all this stuff like I've set my life path. I am, in fact, 21 years old, right? I have so much time and so much freedom to learn what I want. And I think probably once I get a better footing with my English language, prose, and poetry, is when I'll feel more comfortable branching out to other languages. But there's a great deal of English I still have to um, learn. Una cerveza, por favor. um, uh, and where was the other one? Maho dimenticato tutto. I had pasta for dinner just now. Nice. Pasta's great. I made pasta a couple nights ago. My family is very Italian, and that's another language I would learn, which I think if you know French and Spanish and Romance languages, they all come easier, right? I want to learn Latin, Spanish, Hebrew, Chinese, and maybe Japanese. You're like me. Wants to learn lots. I think it's super rare for anyone to master any one language. They're all evolving so quickly, especially ours. That's an interesting point. That the fact that language changes makes it difficult to master. I think in the modern age, something I've thought about a lot. I'm sorry that Sodephi were entirely derailing from your poem. Uh, you know, English now, in terms of, well, like the internet has us like in this rapidly advancing, like shifting language that's really quickly reinventing itself. And something I've thought about a lot is poetry and the use of slang and colloquialisms in poetry and writing and literature, and how we should approach that as writers. I feel like oftentimes it gets perceived as tacky to write in like very present slang, and it's very difficult to do because it shifts so quickly. And I feel like there's a lot of creative opportunity there as a writer to expand one's craft through that sort of like very present colloquial approach. I don't know. We will get back to the poem now. We will not get too distracted from Bloom by Sodephi. I used to think being multilingual was actually a bad thing because you can mix up grammatical rules and make errors in your native and or first language. I I mean that makes sense, right? But probably the benefit outweighs the problem, right? That accent where there's no T and bottle becomes bottle. Yeah, bottle. I'm like a D bottle kind of person. Bottle. Like it's not a bottle. I don't think many people say bottle. Bottle. It's a bottle. It's a dole. Oh, it's very like uvular. The glottal stops instead of T's. Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Bottle. Bottle. Oh. Bottle. Bottle. Here's Bloom. We're gonna talk about the poetry. So what we do here, FJ89, is people send me their poetry on our Discord server, and I read it, and I talk about it, and I break it down. Sometimes people have questions or things they want me to talk about in their poetry. Sometimes I just analyze it, uh, and that's the vibe. You can join the Discord. The Discord is open to all poets, non-poets, new people, old people, everyone, their friends, mothers, families, whoever wants to join. I remember back in my day, the submissions were through Google Forms. Yeah, that was a mess. It was very difficult. Like it worked kind of well for what it was, but it was uh, annoying, I would say. And I think getting people into the Discord is better because it puts people into that like community space to engage with each other. Is it more written poetry you read slash analyze? Can it be an audio form too, kind of like spoken word with instrumental music in the background? I love spoken word with instrumental music in the background. That's another thing that I'm moving toward because I'm a musician. But I have analyzed poetry. Um, I have analyzed videos of poetry on stream. It's a little bit different because I can't write on a video and I can write on here. And, the video's hard because you kind of like constantly are replaying it. So I prefer written poetry. I think the best case is to provide a written poem and um and a video. I think that's best, like video and transcript if you're gonna do that. So there's that. You're a musician. I am a saxophonist. I am a not very passable flautist. I have a piano in my room, though that is not something I'm very good at. I before I was studying interdisciplinary humanities, I was going to music school. I was studying saxophone, and I lasted about one semester of that. So I kind of dropped out of college twice. And that's kind of how I knew that college wasn't for me. So now I play saxophone in a punk band, and that's way more fun. Enough about me. Here is Bloom by Sodephi. We're basically just going to start from scratch here. It never comes easy, does it? It tastes like poison in the mouth, twisting north to south, a sensation in the heart, fluttering, falling. Deeper, deeper still, falling crown, twisting that frown upside down. Does a falling tree even make a sound? Who knows? Not I. Eternally bound. Bound to damnation for my soul at the peak. How does one know what to seek? A breath of fresh air, warmth rushing high, a blazed cheeks, knees, weak heart died. Rojo, the most brilliant, la flor. Yo florezco en invierno. Sí, sí. But it'll never come easy, will it? For it tastes like poison in the mouth, embriagadora veneno, that I will never be freed from. North to south. Which channel should I put my stuff in? If you're just wanting to share it, writing. If you want me to look at it on stream, it's the little forum called Stream Submissions, where you make a new post and you put your poem in it, and you'll be able to see all the other old submissions. I think this one will be at the top. So the question that Sodephi asked at the beginning was a feeling that the middle is unclear. And before we talk about that, as usual, we're just going to talk about what this poem means and how it feels and what's going on. This poem, like Leon's earlier, does have a lot of this like feeling of literary devices and sound and motion. It's a little bit different of a character than Leon's, which was very like dense and back and forth and pinging around. This we have like a lot of our, rhymes at end of line, south mouth, crown down, sound bound, and it really does like go through for longer distances. It's more like sustained and broad. Peak, seek, and then, we even come into cheeks here, died, high. Yeah. So and then we have like the o happening in the Spanish section, but it'll never come easy, calls us back to cheeks and weak from before. For it tastes like poison in the mouth, and then we come back to this mouth, southbound, sound crown kind of vibe. So we have a lot of motion. This poem does feel like it has a lot of like energy going on. I just want to note that. I don't really want to talk that much more about sound because we talked about it a lot on the prior poem. But let's talk about what this means. We need to know what it means if we want to talk about if it's good or if it's, if it's clear, right? Like clear is about an expression of ideas. If I don't know the ideas, I don't know clarity. So, it never comes easy, does it? It tastes like poison in the mouth. Twisting north to south, a sensation in the heart, fluttering, falling. So we're introducing something like very intentionally vague. It never comes easy. It tastes like poison. Twisting north to south, a sensation in the heart, fluttering, falling. We're talking about some kind of feeling. We also have a very nice like symmetry happening in this poem, right? But it's falling. Deeper, deeper still, falling crown, twisting that frown upside down. So these are like maybe our first hints toward what it might be. It's a sensation in the heart. It twists that frown upside down. And then we have this, does a falling tree even make a sound? Which I think you said, Sodephi, is making reference to Dear Evan Hansen, which is a good musical. I enjoyed that one. Let's see, scroll back. Partial reference to Dear Evan Hansen, and specifically the song Waving Through a Window. I wasn't listening to any music while writing the poem. Gotcha. Yeah. So also just the adage of, if a tree falls in a forest, does it make a sound or whatever? Or if no one hears it, that sort of thing. That sort of silly question. But does a falling tree even make a sound? Who knows? Not I. Eternally bound. So we are sort of coming to these questions of like perception and sensation. Does a falling tree even make a sound? Who knows? Not I. There's a level of confusion that we're expressing, and I think that's reflected in this seemingly intentionally vague opening. Where 2 stanzas in, I should have no inclination, I think, of what it is. It doesn't come easy. It tastes like poison. It's a sensation in the heart. It flutters and falls. A falling crown. So we have this idea of like a loss of something valuable. Loss. Nobility. Right? These are things we're drawn to think about. Does a falling tree make a sound? Again, we're losing something. There's absence. There's also this motion, this vertical motion. North to south, top to bottom. We're falling in the poem. Downward. That's happening. All very downward. And then we have the middle section. Bound to damnation. For my soul is at the peak. How does one know what to seek? So we have again like something that plays into our idea of verticality. The opposite of the down, so to speak, is the up. My soul is at the peak. Bound to damnation. Eternally bound to damnation. So I am bound to damnation. I, eternally bound to damnation. For my soul is at the peak. So we have like our first real, like big, clear piece of imagery. And that's we have this mountain. And at the very peak of the mountain, we have my soul. Everything else so far has been depicting, falling, falling, falling. We have the falling crown. We have the falling tree. We have me bound to damnation. Damnation, of course, is low. Hell is very much a down kind of vibe, right? So we have me here. We are down. The soul is at the peak. How does one know what to seek? And this, I feel like, really opens up the poem, because we've very quickly gone from Down, 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 lost, fluttering, falling, deeper, down, upside down, falling tree, frown, right? We're like falling, 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 falling. And then we look to the peak. And then we ask, how does one know what to seek? And really, I feel like this asks the question of like, what direction? What direction are we going in? It almost implies that there's other ways to go, or that there's some choice here in this very like binary up-down vertical conception. So, I mean, so far the middle really like breaks open the poem. It's the first thing that gives us an idea of what's going on, honestly. I'm loving this so far, digging the musicality. Yes, the musicality, the sound is very nice. It flows very well. I think this start really gives us this feeling of just tumbling. It never comes easy, does it? It's, just a statement. It's still, it's the precipice before we go. It tastes like poison in the mouth, twisting. Poison is twisting. It tastes twist. It tastes like poison in the mouth, twisting north to south, a sensation in the heart, fluttering, lift, falling, deeper, deeper, still falling, crown, twisting that frown upside down. Does a falling tree even make a sound? Who knows? Not I. And like hit the bottom. We go from like about to fall to like hitting the ground in like 8 lines. Eternally bound. Bound to damnation. Boom. And like this repetition of like bound with these dashes, it's like such a lift, a pause. For my soul is at the peak. Yeah, from descent to ascent. How does one know what to seek? So maybe now we have an answer. We would hope going forward. I just bumped the camera. I do that every stream. A breath of fresh air. Warmth rushing high. Okay. So we flipped it. We are now looking up. High. Ablazed cheeks, knees weak. One would think maybe from climbing, from motion, from exertion. Heart dyed rojo. The most brilliant la flor, yo florezco en invierno. Sí. Sí. So what is this? I bloom in winter. Right? What does that mean as a symbol? To bloom in winter. Why does this work? Why is this evocative? Because I think we're going from the lowest, the place where no life should be, the bottom, the place of death, to life. To bloom in winter. To have life, to have motion, to have ascent from a place where that cannot occur. So this is like it's this statement of like, I can have something beautiful, I can have growth, I can have direction from the bottom point. This may just be my inner lover boy talking, but is it about love? Fluttery sensations, knees weak. I like this idea. I like it a lot. We also even have the idea of like poison in a mouth. Later, we haven't gotten there yet on this read, but we have intoxicating. So, right, poison in the mouth. Maybe even it never comes easy. Sensation of the heart, fluttering, falling. Even being bound. Right? We have knowing what to seek, warmth, blazed cheeks, knees weak, heart dyed red, hearts beating, flowers. It never comes easy, will it? But it'll never come easy, will it? For it tastes like poison in the mouth, intoxicating venom that I will never be freed from, north to south, no matter where I go. Yeah. I think that's very astute. So I'm going to say right now is this. Remember my Love is Fickle poem, where life sprung up from frigidity, and the life springing up was a sort of symbol for love. Sodephi, I wish I could say, I remembered. Unfortunately, I've read hundreds of poems on stream now, which is tragic. We were talking about this earlier, FJ89. I used to take these analyses and post them on YouTube, and the YouTube channel still exists, and I think there's like 100 videos on my YouTube of just like this stuff. Like a lot of this, it goes way back to like the early days. Is my name Imogen? Yes. Ask me about the etymology sometime. Not right now though. Yeah, so there's a lot of old analyses on the YouTube. Sodephi, are you fine with this one going on YouTube if I start posting on YouTube again? That is a question that I will ask. Yeah, but I mean, if you've written about this before, as my memory is not serving me, it sounds like this is maybe a common Sodephi theme. And even if we go back, right, to the last thing you submitted on stream, like a week ago, that's Brian. That was that one. Ignis, right? We were having this idea of fire and growth and warmth against colds. It seems like this is perhaps a stylistic choice that you appreciate fairly consistently. Okay, Leon likes being bound. Good to know you did say that out loud. We have a few Imogens here in the UK. Yes, there are quite a few there. This is my new favorite channel on Twitch. Awesome. How long will you be streaming for today, Imogen? I will be streaming for until we finish this poem. And then, yeah, you can link the YouTube video. That's super chill, Sodephi. Links are always fine. At least another hour today. My streams are anywhere between 2 and 5 hours, depending on my energy level and how much we get distracted by philosophy, linguistics, music, art, etc. I will not get to your submission today. That is certain, FJ89. But new people are always a priority. I stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays at noon Pacific time, which I think is roughly probably 7 or 8 p.m. UK time. I think y'all are 7 or 8 hours ahead of Pacific time, is my guess. So that's the time. Damn, your voice was very different back then. Yeah. Yes. How things change. I don't even know. I would love to go back and listen to it and see. Um, Performing in the evening though. Yeah, I mean like it's whenever. The submissions stay in the submission thing indefinitely. Sometimes I forget about them, so usually helps to like be reminded, you know. But usually I'll just go live and then I'll start and we'll talk for a while and yap, and then depending on who's around, I'll do a submission from like whoever's around. And then, like roughly 2 hours into stream, I'll get done with that poem. And then, depending on who's around and how much energy I have, I'll sometimes do another one. On very rare occasions, I'll do 3, but that's very rare. So that's kind of the vibe. So Sodephi, you yucky bot. It's just a bot. It can't hurt you. We all know it. It's a bot. It's can't get too. I like not banning them at this point. It's like an exercise in just not letting it bother me. Well, I'll follow you too on Instagram too, and if you're gonna get to mine. Please DM me if you're able. I can try. It's definitely usually just happens as a spur of the moment, whatever I choose. And but if you show up, like the new people are always especially like prioritized, where if I haven't read someone's poem, I'm always gonna like pretty much read theirs before someone else's. So yeah. Anyway, we're talking about love. It seems we're talking about love emerging, flowering from the frigid, frozen earth. Love is like a high ideal at the peak. Souls, very dramatic, right? Yo florezco en invierno. Sí, sí. But it'll never come easy, will it? I like how we do like invierno and C and easy. That's a very cool like element of sound that happens. I dig this a lot. But it'll never come easy, will it? For it tastes like poison in the mouth, intoxicating venom that I will never be freed from. North to south, no matter where I go, no matter what I do, this maybe says, I am bound. I am bound by the idea of love. Bound to damnation, eternally bound. And I think this makes sense for love, right? We have this interesting thing with love where we consider love this incredibly high ideal and pursuit and like something like even divine, right? 2 souls, like all of that. And then we also have love as like sinful and like indulgent and shameful and intoxicating, if we're to use words from the poem, cold even, or wintry. We have love as something that binds us. We have literally falling in love, as FJ89 says. Transactional, perhaps another word that is a bad thing in love. Not necessarily touched upon by the poem itself. Venomous and poisonous. We can even then defer to like a sort of biblical snake, hell, sin, bite, venom. all of that. Um, so definitely has this idea of like inversion. Love should be unconditional, maybe. I'm not sure. The very quick recap of Love is Fickle is that it's a buildup from citizens in the city or country being caught. I do remember this poem. In an apocalyptic event, which is actually just the inner mechanisms of figuring out being in love with someone, to the finishing stanzas being that the narrator would be glad to end on a good note with this person. I do remember that poem. I I think I remember enjoying it. I I do remember you had like fire in the streets and stuff, and it was talking. Yeah, yeah. That was a long time ago, Sodephi. That was like forever and ever ago. Newsflash: me and the person I wrote it for broke up. Yeah, I do remember that you were writing it for that person, and there was some uh, problems in that situation. um, so we kind of have the idea of this poem, and we know that it's moving toward love. And we're talking about flowers and beauty and, the thorny, venomous parts of love. I feel like missed opportunity really to use thorns, right? Um, Feel free to take that if you want, but flowers, thorns, blooming, love. This is kind of my current boyfriend, but also my experience with prior relationships. I see. Um, so this is kind of the idea we have going on. Like, we roughly get this poem. We haven't maybe dived super deep into every word, but it's probably enough of an understanding that we can think about, you know, do we like the middle? Do we like this? Because you say you feel they're kind of unclear. This middle section, you feel it maybe doesn't contribute to the poem. And I think that is something that, I don't know, it could probably go either way. I could see this being more clear. I also see this as a very important pivotal moment in the poem. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a brief break, a brief mental break, not an ad break, a mental break, where we're going to stand up, get a snack, drink water, I don't know, do some push-ups, move the world off of its axis, get a beer, make some tea, go to the bathroom, or do one of the many things that go on the ever-expanding list of small inside jokes that I say before the ad break. I'll see you in 3 minutes. We're going to keep talking about the poem. I will be right back. Welcome back. I missed y'all. I'm still Imogen. We are still talking about poetry. And in fact, we are still talking about a poem called Bloom by Sodephi. A poem about love. I hope that was a lovely 3-minute break to not think about poetry for a moment. Because it's useful to step away, clear the head a little bit. Ideas can be overwhelming. Information can be overloading. I feel much more centered after that ad break. I like the ad breaks. They give me a second to lock the fuck in, So anyway, Bloom. We're going to read through the whole thing again. We kind of talked about it mostly, and then we're going to get into the question. Do we like the middle? Is this good? Does this feel effective in this poem? Could it be better? Should it be better? Why? How? Etc., etc. and any other questions that come up along the way, because questions can happen at any time, and that's totally cool and awesome, because questions shouldn't be shamed in the way that they are in modern education. So, here's Bloom. It never comes easy, does it? It tastes like poison in the mouth, twisting north to south, a sensation in the heart, fluttering, falling. Deeper, deeper, still falling, crown, twisting that frown upside down. Does a falling tree even make a sound? Who knows? Not I. Eternally bound, bound to damnation, for my soul is at the peak. How does one know what to seek? A breath of fresh air, warmth rushing high, a blazed cheek, sneeze weak, heart dyed rojo, the most brilliant, la flor, yo florezco en invierno, sí, sí. But it'll never come easy, will it? It tastes like poison in the mouth, embriagadora veneno, that I will never be freed from, north to south. I like this poem. It falls, it feels kind of sad and miserable and despondent, and then we like pop back up and realize the peak, and we have this breath of fresh air, and we come back up, and then it's hard and it comes back down. It's like love is great, and then love has challenge, and then love is awful, and love is venom, and then love is hope, and love is fluttering, and love flies back to the top, and we do this. What goes up must come down. FJ89. I think that is a perfect description, right, of this poem. And it really speaks to love as just this like cyclical back and forth dialectical kind of experience. And love is hate and hate is love, two sides of the same coin. And what goes down must come up too. Yes. From the bottom we climb, from the top we fall. From the bottom we flutter, from the top we fall. Don't know if anyone here has heard the song Love by Musique Soulchild. No? But I can maybe check that out on my own time myself, because I love music recommendations, and I love good music, so it better be good music, FJ89. If it's not, you're banned forever. I kid. Love by Musique. I'm writing this down on paper. Soulchild. Okay. Written on paper. Now I can never forget. So, the question we asked at the start, that Sodephi asked or posed, or the statement, all of that stuff, was, is the middle... Well, Sodephi, you said you don't like the middle. You said it feels unclear, maybe doesn't fit well. And the question is, how can we make it better? Now, answering the question as such sort of yields to your statement that this is unclear and that this is maybe not good in the poem. And I think that's something I would like to examine first. The question of, is it actually not good? Or if it is sort of off or out of place, what makes it as such? And first I want to talk about... I'm going to talk about a few things. I think I'm basically going to try to disprove that this is bad. Um, First of all, it acts as a transition. Leon Nagal's actually ahead of me. It brings a nice symmetry and introduces the second part. So let's talk about that first. Introduces the second part. Um, Bound to damnation, for my soul is at the peak. How does one know what to seek? A breath of fresh air, warm rushing high. Warmth rushing high. Oh, this is even like warm air ascending too. No, 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 Leon, it's really good. I like your comments. Um, so it introduces the second part. It's the first time we introduce high and up and vertical, and it asks the question. It gives some amount of like agency to the narrator or to the one asking the questions. How does one know what to seek? Implies that something can be sought, that a direction can be taken. And so then, naturally, what follows that is our first instance of like choosing a direction, choosing to climb, this like rejuvenation, breath of fresh air, warmth rushing high. I think that makes sense. It also transitions well out of what is before, right? We go, does a falling tree even make a sound? Who knows? Not I. Eternally bound. I, eternally bound, bound to damnation. So, I mean, like, it's a great, like, stream of consciousness, sort of motion that happens here, where we go from, like, I'm asking this question, who knows? Not I. Oh, I, what's the deal with me? I'm eternally bound. Eternally bound where? Bound to damnation. Like, we take all these leaps, but it feels very linear. And, you know, bound to damnation, for my soul is at the peak. And we've like come full circle in this little like sort of progression, if you will. It's I don't know, it's like a 2-5-1. It's a chord progression. Like we start with the idea of falling as our main like one chord, and then we build tension. You know, who knows? Not I, eternally bound. We're modulating in different directions, bound to damnation. And then we set ourselves back up to like resolve to the place we started. It's incredibly musical in the way that functions. And it like it works. I think that works from like a perspective of like narrative flow. So it's certainly not out of place, right? If it were out of place, it would be because, you know, it doesn't feel like it feels like it comes out of nowhere. It isn't introduced properly or transitioned into. That can make something feel out of place. It can also feel out of place to bring in new material, right? If we bring in something new and different, we might be confused. But yes, peak is different, peak is new, but not really, because we've already been talking about falling and moving down. So, like, the juxtaposition of we've gone from low to high makes sense and follows logically. So, and then the idea of seeking then extrapolates upon the idea of like binary up and down motion. Where should I go on this continuum? So it doesn't feel out of place in any way like that. Thematically, it all works. Leon, you also say it brings in nice symmetry. We have a very beautiful poem structurally. Four-line stanza, 4-line stanza, 4-line stanza, 4-line stanza. And the middle has this, you know, 2-line diversion. If anything, looking at this poem visually, I would have to expect that this middle point is a sort of inflection, and that, this is going to take us in a different direction, right? It's like the diagram I drew. Yeah. We have the stuff at the top, we have the stuff at the bottom, and there's like this small space in between, this nebulous thing that's in between. Yeah. Like the midpoint between the top and the bottom, it shows us a symmetry. It shows us an idea of a cyclical thing. If we draw a graph of like a sine wave, like this is kind of what's happening, right? We have like the quality of love graphed against, the quality of love on the, maybe love and venom, we'll say. And then we have like time, right? And we have always this very narrow point in between where we're like questioning, what am I doing? We keep going to these like Elysian highs and these hellish, miserable, brutal, impossible to understand lows, to like the highs of love and the lows. And in between that, we're left asking this question: how does one know what to seek? Like, how do I do this? Do I abandon the cycle? Do I try to live always at the peak? Do I become fully indulgent and hedonic and live in hell and venom and, trying to live a life that's so poetic and storybook and tragic and narrative, Like, it seems that the structure itself with these 4-4-2-4-4 really like reflects the whole idea of what we're trying to do. Poetry, huh? Yes. Welcome in. We do talk about poetry. This is a poem submitted by Sodephi, who is a viewer. This is what we do. We have a Discord server. People send me their poetry. I write all over it. I talk about what I think. If people have questions or want feedback, sometimes I help with those things. Sometimes we just talk about the poems. Are you a writer? You're I don't know how to say your name. Leon, you say those two lines are great. Yeah, the more I internalize their place within the poem, I really like it. Even better, peak is the last word of the first line of the last word of the first line of the couplet, making it the absolute peak of the poem. Yeah, if we are to look at the poem as like this is the very middle of the poem, right? Literally this word and maybe this part, like how and peak. How does one go about navigating the fact that as humans, we are constrained to the idea of like the peaks and lows and, radical up-down shifting nature of love. It feels perfect. It's like a thesis in a sense. It's the heart, maybe is a better word, of the poem, and it sits right comfortably in the middle. So, Sodephi, you say you don't like these lines. I like them. These two also seem to like them. If you're still around, I don't know if you're still in chat, but I would have to ask, yeah, you are still here. Why don't you like them? Right? I've given my piece about why I like these lines. But, if you had a strong reason, like if you do have a strong reason, I'd love to know. Like, why don't you like these lines? Because then we can talk about through that lens, how we can start to improve them. Maybe to you they feel trite or like a trope. Maybe to you they feel like they're still out of place. Maybe to you they feel like something else. Maybe you're just too self-critical. But if you have a reason that still they bug you, then yeah. You do right. You're Ray. I need to Ure TFT. We'll go Ure. Cool. That's awesome. If you're interested in hanging out, we have a Discord server. People are always welcome to send their poetry. Certainly not required. Yeah, writing is cool. FJ89 with the International Phonetic Alphabet. Yeah. I don't enjoy the question I posed, but it seems as though it's getting good reception anyway. Yeah, I mean, I would say it's okay to not like something in your poem, right? Like the question was basically, I don't like it. How can I do better? Right? That's basically the question you asked. And like this is like kind of the core of all questions. I don't know something. I want to get better at it. And I think, it's important though. When we look at something and say, I don't like it, an impulse we can take as people that helps us grow on our own, maybe without the feedback of others, is to, before moving on to how can I do better, right? The first thing we do is, before we ask how can I do better, we ask why. Why don't I like it? Right? Like the couplet is very good. I just don't like it for some reason. And I think the impulse of self-teaching, of being autodidactic, is to say, I don't like this, or I like this. I have an opinion, because it's good to have an opinion about writing, to like something or not like something. But then you ask why. Why don't I like this? Why do I feel like it can be better? How does it feel bad or not enough? Right? And when we ask that question, it leads us probably to like grow and analyze on our own. And sometimes we go to why and we say like, I don't know. I don't have any reason that I actually think this is bad. At which point I would allow yourself to say that it isn't bad. And then if you do dig into that line, maybe you'll go after stream and keep digging into that line and you say, I think it's because of the way that it sounds in relation to the rest of the poem. Then you can go, what part sounds out of place? Why do I think that? Right? You ask why again. It sounds to, whatever of these reasons, and this is how we like iterate and grow on our own writing. That's also not to say that this is like a bad thing to do. Because sometimes like it's really helpful when someone offers, to be someone who can give feedback when someone offers to read and to listen and to hear out your poem, sometimes it's good to just throw this question out and see what someone else thinks, because that can lead to like an entirely different conversation that you wouldn't maybe have with yourself. So I wouldn't be too hard on yourself for asking this question. But I would also invite you to consider some of this thought process in your writing, because it can be very helpful. And like the reality is we don't always have other people to read our stuff. Technically came just to find a streamer into specific books, for example, Dostoevsky, but this seems fun too. I personally have not read any Dostoevsky. I have both Crime and Punishment and The Brothers Karamazov on my shelf. I do really like Russian literature. I really love Vladimir Nabokov, and I like Tolstoy, although I kind of dropped Anna Karenina, but it was like a really good book. I like Pushkin. Pushkin's good. So I have read some Russian literature, but not Dostoevsky yet. He's definitely on my list. Yeah. I'm mostly into unhinged authors. I mean, most of us are. I think most of us as an authors are unhinged, right? I'm probably not alone in thinking that editing is the hardest part. Yeah, I think that's a very common thing, because poetry often comes out as this like momentary, free, sprawling, vomiting expression of ideas. And it's very hard to capture the sentiment of the original moment of creation in editing. You never edit your writing. Yeah, and arguably one, like, there's a good argument to not, right? Because it is about that moment, that raw, pure incident of expression. For some things, I think there are some pieces of art that, like, I usually don't edit, but sometimes I want to say something so specific that it cannot be done without a lot of iteration and editing. I'm usually in the don't edit camp. I usually just analyze other people's poems and then let the things that I learn from this rub off into the impulsive act of creation. I knew a few of those. I rarely do. Demoitis. Oh, like music, like demos, like only making demos. That's funny. Whatever's the value, whatever's the output, I value, and I think that's like a very healthy way to approach art. Thank you anyway. I think I was being too harsh on myself. I also think you were, and I think that's okay. It happens. It's something that like we can very easily fall into, but I think this poem does a really good job. Does anyone else, or Sodephi, if you have any more questions, or if anyone has questions or thoughts on this poem? I feel like we've gone into it pretty thoroughly with the questions posed, and I mean we've drawn a graph and a picture, which means we've been pretty thorough with this one. Yeah, Sodephi wrote this like at the beginning of stream today, like 3 hours ago. Very like present of the moment, raw kind of writing. I do like it a lot. I love me a bilingual poem. I think it's a great thing to do. Yeah. Is it reflecting upon the past or your more current state? That's a good question. I think you mentioned your current relationship, but also the old poem that it sort of has its roots in that we talked about a bit. Both. Yes. It feels like it has a lot, right? Like this really is talking about love more as a fundamental pattern and as like a repeated thing that happens over and over again, more so than a moment. And I do tend to like poems that shift from being deeply of the moment and like about a single thing and an event to being more about fundamental truths. So it's the kind of style of writing that I enjoy. I do like that about it. I'm going to read it again just to cap us off and end our uh, analysis for today, unless anyone cuts me off by asking more questions about this. If Two-Thirds Lotus is able to check out Acorns today, it's only 8 lines and ends with an Arabic term. Just saying. You're responding to Leon. I think this is the last poem for today. My voice is feeling a little scratchy, and it might not look like it. I might look like I'm just vibing and like, very easily talking about poetry and that this is effortless. But it does take a considerable mental load to see a poem for the first time, talk about it for an hour or more, etc. So, yeah. And to reply to like Leon's message before, that I don't usually read something like the day someone comes in and submits it. It's not always the case. Like sometimes someone will come in, I'll submit it, I will just like read it right there. Um, Usually the issue is I'm already doing something if someone comes in and submits. Sounds good. Hopefully I won't miss you reading mine next or some stream. I never read someone's stuff if they're not in chat, because that would kind of suck, I think. I like talking to people about their poems, and I like having people there for the analysis. It means if you don't show up, I'm never going to read it. It's convenient for your continued engaged viewership or whatever. But um, I stream on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. Does sound lagging? Okay, it would be. Uh-oh, stream is acting up. 3 hours and 20 minutes limit. It does tend to act up after a while. Are we back to sound working? Are we good? It looks like it has green on my things. I think it's good. Maybe it's still lagging. Okay, sounds better. Yeah, so I stream on Mondays, Wednesdays, Saturdays. And uh it's just like always the case, same time, noon Pacific. Uh Discord will ping you if you're in it that I'm streaming. It just at everyone. If you mute it, it won't ping you. Yeah, that's okay. That's the vibe. Anyway, that's outside of the scope of this poem. We're gonna read Bloom, and then we'll be done with this, and we can keep yapping if stream permits. Bloom. It never comes easy, does it? It tastes like poison. in the mouth, twisting north to south, a sensation in the heart, fluttering, falling. Deeper, deeper, still falling, crown twisting, that frown upside down. Does a falling tree even make a sound? Who knows? Not I. Eternally bound. Bound to damnation, for my soul is at the peak. How does one know what to seek? A breath of fresh air. Warmth rushing high, ablazed cheeks, knees weak, heart dyed rojo, the most brilliant la flor, yo florezco en invierno. Sí. Sí. But it'll never come easy, will it? For it tastes like poison in the mouth. Embriagadora veneno. That I will never be freed from. North to south. Bloom. Thank you so much for submitting, Sodephi. I appreciate your submission greatly. I appreciate everyone who sends poetry, because this wouldn't work. Oh, it's lagging. I see it lagging. I'm like, it's probably jittering a little bit. This wouldn't work without all of you submitting and continuing to just send me new poetry constantly, again and again, over and over, right? Like, it's awesome, you know? So I appreciate y'all. Yet another love poem was the least poetic poem I've written, each stanza being the most straightforward line ever. So then I wrote, Love is Fickle. Oh yeah, and these are the things you sent on stream. For my ex-girlfriend is my next poem, and it was Leagues Better. Then I broke up with her and scrapped several love poems, and finally I ended up with Bloom. I mean, in a sense, that's editing, right? That's iteration. That's continuing to do the same thing, and it's gotten, like, no doubt, miles and miles better. So, I mean, like, yeah. I think it's a good proof of concept, because I think Bloom is one of the best things of yours I've written. I think I like it more than Ignis. The other things were from like a year ago, and I recall this being like better, or this is better than I recall those ones being. So, I mean, it's really awesome to see y'all like submit over larger amounts of time and see the way that, like, many people in this community are growing as poets, and that I'm growing. Like, I look at my poems from a year ago, or, you know, a year and a half ago when I started streaming, and like, I'm just better, right? All of this reading poetry and talking about poetry has made me a better poet. All of that, you know? I mean, my favorite poem is from Le Fleur de Mal, and is a metaphor for the poet, dead girlfriend carcass laying in a ditch. Yeah, Baudelaire is pretty wild. I really love the poem in Fleur de Mal, Damned Women. There's two poems called Damned Women. It's the one at the end that's talking about like two Greek lovers, and it's like this sort of sapphic thing about love as power dynamics. I think it's very, very good. My second favorite poem is called Joyride. I wrote Joyride in early 2025. It's neat and lyrical. I don't like it much nowadays. Joyride is also my ex-girlfriend, so that's fun. Yeah, I mean, relationships give us a lot of inspiration.